Mindustry PvP. This is a version 7 game on Erekir, and we're on my playtest Eviction server. Absolute first thing that needs to be done, build one power plant and build a unit factory. There are 4 vents in every hex, and vents are a major limiting factor in the economy, so you want to get more of them as soon as you can to expand faster. You need units to take additional hexes by sending them to attack and capture the cores on them, so make units first. I intentionally set the starting loadout so that there are enough resources to build whichever of the 3 factories you choose. You can have the tanks or the mechs or the ships, and then you can manually pull resources out of your core and load them into the factory to get the construction going. There's enough to start out to give you like 2 or 3 units at least of each type. And while those are going, you can start building up the other initial pieces of the economy you need. You need a lot of beryllium. You aren't comfortably pulling in beryllium until you have the equivalent of like 30 or 35 of these plasma drill things. It just takes a nonsense amount. Then you need silicon. The silicon is gonna keep the unit factory going so the expansion can continue. More and more and more vents. You gotta get so many vents. As far as the competition in this game, there is one other decent player, and he is on the very, very, very opposite corner of the map, the most distant possible place. It's going to take a while to get there safely. So an adjustment on version 7 Eviction versus version 6. Because unit control is so powerful at skewing things in favor of attacking against defending, because you have to defend so much overall ground if you have a large base. I've added a attrition mechanic, and what that does is if your units travel too far away from one of your friendly cores, then they have a small chance of dying every few seconds. So, think of it like life support. Units need life support that comes from your cores. If you get too far away, then they don't get the life support and they start dying. So it is possible to go very, very far away from your base, but it'll cost you units randomly dying while you're there. And the purpose of that is to prevent people from just attacking out of nowhere over the entire other side of the map with no warning, especially with like eludes being as fast and doing as much damage as they do. I don't want the entire game to just be elude rushes all the time, every time. So this gives people some breathing room to build up safely and make some of the other things viable. And if you actually do, or of course you want to go and actually win the game, which requires getting to the other players. And you gotta do that by capturing cores in the direction of their base until you're next to them, and then you can safely have your units there fighting without suffering attrition. Work your way through. Another thing that's very good about that attrition mechanic is it stops the incentive to, once you get eludes into their base and you're killing their unit factories and their power plants and whatever else, you actually don't have the incentive to kill them outright and take their cores. You just kill all their economy stuff and cripple them, because when you kill cores, the core explosions kill units. So your eludes would stay alive and able to keep them pinned down indefinitely if they weren't also suffering attrition while they were there. Alright, so I had my first Titan drill. Titan's another one of the things that you never seem to get enough of it from the first source. It's like 1.33, oh, it's not even Titan, it's tungsten. Too many T metals. Alright, you gotta make a lot of those drills to be comfortable. I'm not really comfortable with like the higher economy stuff yet. I don't have enough games under my belt to get used to it. So my default is just to build more of the basic extractors if I want more of whatever I'm missing. Okay, so I boosted my silicon, I boosted some other income, and this is the hex where I'm going to go for my first mass production factory. So the schematic that I put together, and I guess it saves a little time, although it's a little less interesting. You can basically use the same schematic for all the unit types. The only difference is 2 of them need beryllium and 2 of them, the ships don't. For T1 factories, 1 silicon arc can support production out of 3 factories. You combine those together into a schematic, so you only need 2 inputs for a ship. 1, you need the sand and you need the graphite. And one of the things that it's possible to do is with underflow routers, whatever they're called, you can just pass a line of all the resources you need through there, as long as you're not putting more than 15 per second on there and clogging the thing. And whatever excess comes out the other side, you can just put in the core, because hey, graphite is also a building material. So within, that was just a minute or so, you can put down one of these factories. It's actually kind of, it's a balanced thing that hasn't been considered by the Mindustry developer, that the different kinds of inputs are sort of one of the limiting factors in whether a thing is strong or weak. It's a big boost to ships that you only need to put in 2 resources to build as many ships as you want, versus the other things need 3. So that's extra different wiring that you need to do to get those running. And this effect gets a lot more pronounced, not between different ship types, but you go up the tiers, like T3s need a nonsense amount of like 6 or 7 different inputs of different kinds, and it takes such a long time to actually get a T3 factory up and running. It's very different from doing like core unloader factories in version 6 or in Serpulo, where you can just hang the thing off the core with the right unloaders, and as long as you have the surplus resources being produced elsewhere, then it'll just start making. It's a lot harder to get higher tier units on Serpulo. So there's this, just give me 1 tiny little nibble of oxide here, and that'll be enough to get some of the bigger plasma drills or whatever other thing. I'm not really going to try and do higher tech hard. I don't think I go past T2. So I'm going to just save up a bunch of eludes, and that first stealth factory is what I'm going to use to take more space. As long as I'm taking new hexes slightly faster than I'm building into, then things are fine. I don't need a bunch of empty space for forward progress yet. I'm looking for some wall thorium because I want to plug that hydrogen into it and start getting thorium. But I didn't see it, so I'm just going to do something else instead. I think there's another elude factory. Yeah, I'm just going to bank up the eludes, and those are expected to be used for whenever I do my first real attack. One of the changes, so version 140 got released last night as of me recording this, which is sort of like a midway beta using bug fixes and whatever that have accumulated since the beta was released. And I upgraded the servers. And one of the things that adds is a bug fix for Fog of War, where previously Fog of War would mess up the minimap and you wouldn't be able to see what's going on out there except for like some shadows. But now I can turn Fog of War on and it works. 10 minutes. There we go. Reach 1028. That's the name of the other guy. So now the playtest servers have Fog of War on. I haven't had a chance to actually play a game on there yet. I'm expecting it to be spookier. It was Halloween yesterday. But you won't be able to see things coming. You won't be able to know which direction to go to get to your enemy. It'll probably, well, it'll be easier in the beginning because people won't be able to come and target you if they haven't found you yet. And then it'll get harder because the good players will be able to use that information hiding to just build up an eco massively without being under threat. So we may have to have just like sacrificial scout eludes going out trying to find where the good players are so that you know where to attack towards or do something to slow them down. Early rush is going to get a lot harder, which concerns me in a balanced sense, but we'll see. Yeah. All right. So a little bit of thorium coming in, do another oxide. What oxide factories make really slowly. It's like 30 per minute. I have a bigger oxide factory with better ratios, but it's also more expensive resource-wise. It doesn't use much power still, and the nice thing about that is it's got a focused heat output, so I can bounce from that straight into usually Surge. I like Surge. The Afflict turrets are cool, and they're like the first turrets that are actually effective in a meaningful sense. Like they've got some decent area of effect and decent damage output. They can actually clear a big blob of T1 units coming in at you or significantly deter some T2s. Alright, this is me setting up for my first T2 factory. This schematic, it's the ratios for turning all the water that comes out of one water vent, whatever the name of that thing is, the green one that doesn't make power. Oh, yeah, that map, I didn't see it, but he is sending some eludes at me. They are suffering attrition and they are heading for my upper right section that I just put down. And I'm not going to notice that for a while. It will do some damage, but it won't take me out, which is a pretty reasonable outcome, I think, since that is such sort of a stretched attack, like, distant logistics and whatever. So, as of when this game was played, Locust was really overpowered. It probably still is. I haven't looked at numbers again since anything. I don't actually know if Locust had any balance fixes between 139 and 140. But Locusts are really strong. They do a lot of damage. They do the same DPS as the T3 tank, which is kind of nonsense. They're good as just sort of the infantry holding ground equivalent unit for strategic purposes. And to get a T2 factory going, I'm going to have to wire in the hydrogen that I just prepared. Enough graphite and sand to run, like, it's not much. It's like 1.2 or 1.3 arc furnaces worth. So I overbuilt silicon a little bit. Hi, cat. I overbuilt the silicon capacity a little bit in that factory, and it's fine because I don't have to keep those things completely full. And if I do keep them full, then that extra silicon goes into my building pool. Like I can use that for advancement elsewhere. So it's not a loss at all. I do need to actually wire the last duct that does the excess output to the core. It also needs 2 impact drills worth of tungsten. And that'll be the last thing that I have to put in. I've already got the water vent prepared for those. So one water vent will run 2 of these. If you use the water from the vent power plant, then you need to pipe in 3 to 1. You've got a little bit of excess because it's like each one makes 5 and the vent uses 12 and a half. You might very well just put 10 in and have it do a little under efficiency, which they're already crap at, producing quickly. And the power need for that thing is, it's something like 7 or 8 vents worth of power. The T1 factories that I use, they need a little bit more than 4 vents worth of power to run. There aren't a whole lot of things in the economy on Erekir that actually use a super large ton of power. It's very different from Serpulo in that way. Oh yeah, I gotta put beryllium into these two. This is probably too much, but hydrogen's already there, and that thing makes like 18 hydrogen per second, so there's quite a bit of spare to run into drills and things. I'm a little confused about my power being bad. I thought I just built too much, but what actually happened is I lost connection to some vents on the other side. Tanks extend for, oh, yeah. So this is, I'm confused as I play here. Like, where did my stuff go? Things sort of working, but some of it's missing. It must have been attacked, even though I didn't notice it happen. Supposedly there is a command in the new mode where if you have destroyed structures, you push that and it will automatically like set down the build queue so that you'll start rebuilding. So it's sort of like how polys behave in version 6, rebuilding stuff automatically, but you have your player ship do it, which that's a good quality of life change. The only other way to do it was using build towers, and those take some nitrogen to run, or they take one of the gases to run, so they're a little bit involved. And they need oxide and heat and stuff. So now that I've been attacked, I'm going to start extending my cores towards the other side, and I'll start using my eludes to harass him. It's probably not even worth it to rebuild these. At this point, I should put in my real oxide factory, but I don't know, OCD or something. It feels messy to leave this broken stuff here. I'm still not perfect at recognizing that pink is ozone and blue is hydrogen. So a lot of times I'll end up with like a pipe that has the wrong thing in it, and then you have to pull out the one pipe at the end so that it will spill out the wrong thing and clear it out to get it fixed. It's a lot harder to fix liquid clogs than item clogs. He did a decent job of choosing the targets while he was here. You'd really want to take out the unit factories, but with all those eludes sitting there, that would not be an easy target to take. I could have snuck around them to the side and hurt some of my other production, but he was probably having too much attrition by that point, having traveled across 10 or 15 empty hexes without any life support. Alright, there's my real oxide factory. So you put in like 5 or 6 beryllium into the top. It goes through 8 oxidizers. It makes 3 oxide per second, and it's got that heat output at the bottom too. You want to put a carbide there. You want to put a surge smelter there. Whatever. It's free heat. Electric heaters are kind of expensive, especially if I'm not building combustion or pyrolysis or something, which I tend to do pretty late because it's pretty easy to just take more hexes and get more vents, then that's more of a building densely kind of thing. I wonder what the math is on like how many vents is equivalent to my combustion plant uses 6 combustion generators. I think it's like plus 3,600 power or so. So that's 20 vents. And okay, so that's 5 hexes worth of vents to do a power plant. I don't need to play dense in this game at all, so it's real easy to make more vents. The wiring is a little fiddly. Yeah, that's probably the biggest time and attention sink in doing that versus setting up this power plant, which doesn't fit because of one garbage wall in the way, so I gotta do rotating shenanigans. This thing needs 3 pumps of the green. And it's really, pumps having both liquid input and liquid output is pretty annoying. This is one of the instances where the different pipe behavior from version 6 as far as not accepting inputs from the side, only building exits are only a directly outward pump, is actually really important because otherwise it would be a lot harder to do the piping on these things. It's interesting that they don't need power because there's so much stuff that's powered by a gas and doesn't use any electricity at all. The same brownout effect almost doesn't come into play at all as in Serpulo. Like Serpulo, your power goes down and suddenly you need to go into jumpstart mode and do stuff with batteries. But here, a lot of the power plants don't really have a significant power requirement for operating, so you don't get brownouts in the same way. Also, a lot of my power plants are sort of over-provisioned for the things that do come out of power-requiring buildings, and then there's like a tank with extra hydrogen, so you get a lot more leeway. Yeah, I should have just put that surge on the bottom of my oxide factory instead of rigging up the self-contained schematic. I don't think I'm going to actually use any of it, though. When my elude tack front finally gets to the other side, well, that's going to be pretty much all I actually need to win. Laying pipe is just so time consuming. Yeah, so just a little bit of graphite and a little bit of sand for the input to the surge, and I gotta get a hydrogen to run the pumps. But now that I have a full-size power plant, I can replace a lot of the tiny vents with water vents to do something more if I need to. I think there might be a change in 140 as far as how pipes connect coming out of junctions, so it's a bit more forgiving. Because a lot of times you have to do an extra little dogleg turn thing so that the pipe is coming directly out of a junction and actually connects. So, a mistake that my opponent made is he used all of his army to take some of those forward hexes. And if you use more than necessary, especially since it's undefended and there's no threats, if you use more to take a hex than you need to, then you're gonna suffer a lot more attrition than you need to, because every unit in that hex when the core explodes has a chance of rolling some random die and potentially dying in the explosion. And that's carryover mechanic from Eviction, which was used to prevent the first player that gets a giant zenith blob from automatically winning the game, which happened way too often in the old days. So I put in sort of a negative feedback loop to make sure that people had strong production to back up their attacks and not just waited around until you have a big army. All right, now this is some real-time strategy action. He is sending a stream of units into what is basically a concave, and they're going to get wrecked even though eludes are bad at fighting stealths, since stealths have a little more armor and the eludes have more weaker shots. And I also put down a defensive wall there, since I figured that's where a fight was going to take place. And that, you know, I'd rather have them shooting at walls instead of at my units. I also have the option of like trying to put down a unit repairer, since you can make a little bit of power anywhere you want with vents, which was something that was harder to do in the Serpulo tile set. Trying to use my locusts against his eludes, but then I want to get them out of these tiles so that the core destruction doesn't affect them. And I also, you know, I want my locusts to be taking hits while my eludes are a little behind them so that they survive a little longer. And I also send a little bit of units to each one of these cores to move my front forward. So those locusts are pretty much his remaining forces, and once I get that, I'm basically in and done and can start dismantling him. I'm still gonna try to not put my excess reserves in the same hex as a core that I'm taking down, but I will need to add a little bit more to make sure that his locust there doesn't stop it completely. Some eludes, I can bring up my own reserves. That command, rally, I think there is a select all added in 140, which is a nice quality of life thing. That didn't exist in 139, so I used the plugin to add a command that automatically gives an order to all of your units to move to wherever your player ship is. And that's still different and useful versus the select. Well, okay, the select all, you can send them wherever you want, but it has to be where your camera is panned to. And the rally is wherever your ship is, so it's a little limited. There is still no equivalent for the attack command, which every unit you have gets an order to move close to the nearest enemy core. And that's necessary. That's very important on my servers because the win condition is taking all of the cores. So in the mop-up phase, when you've beaten all of the opposition and you just need to clean up any cores that are left, you need these attack commands to send your units off to finish things. I've also since added a full assault command, which is just like the attack command, but it repeatedly does it every 20 seconds. That's how it's currently set. I think I might change it to 15 or 10. Speed things up a bit more. Yeah, there it is. I have crippled my opponent, and now I just need to clear the rest of the map. Yeah, so that finishes up this one. See you next game.